Peace, friends. I'm Pastor Tom Arthur from Sycamore Creek Church in Lansing, Michigan. Whether you experience sheltering in place as positive or negative, we can all shelter in God's grace daily. Psalm 91 says, "Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty." Our Daily Shelter is a live video podcast where we interview an expert in one area or topic related to COVID-19 and sheltering in place, so that we can find God's grace for today. We cover a range of topics from science to government and theology to prayer. We're looking to find God's grace in each area of our lives. So let's shelter in God's grace together right now. We're supposed to be sheltering in place, but what happens when your shelter isn't safe? For many children, places outside the home like school or clubs or church are a refuge from a home that is at the least challenging or at the most threatening. How can these children be protected from their shelter? It's a heartbreaking situation, to say the least. Today, I'm thankful to have Our Daily Shelter, Tashmica Firecracker Torok. Tashmica was in Sycamore Creek's stage adaptation of Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham Jail as the community organizer, which is to say she was just playing herself. And she's also the founder of the Firecracker Foundation, whose mission is to honor the bravery of children who have survived sexual trauma by building a community invested in the healing of their whole being. Tashmica, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we get to this topic today of childhood sexual trauma and COVID-19, what's it been like for you personally to shelter in place? What's been your experience, and have there been any moments of grace in the midst of it?
We've been good. I love having my kids at home with me. I don't like to have to take them to school. I am not a homeschooler, but I just want my kids around me. So I feel like in some ways I'm uniquely qualified to have my children stuck at home with me. And the fact that we don't
I feel
have
like that's the general paradox of parents right now. Is we both enjoy more time with our kids, but we also don't.
Yeah, and also sometimes I'm like, if you could stop talking to me about the video game that I don't know what you're saying at me. You're like saying words at me about a thing that I don't understand.
For us, it's a Minecraft monologue.
Yeah, we're not in Minecraft anymore. There's like Fortnite things going on, yeah. And there's lots of different games happening.
We haven't evolved to that level of gaming yet.
Well, we've got 3 levels.
Okay.
We got our,
How old are your kids?
Almost 17, 14, and 11. So
yeah,
we've got like
you're a little ahead of me.
Yeah. So it's been good. My husband has been home. I am feeling very fortunate that I can do a lot of my work from afar, and running programs and hosting trainings and things like that. So that's been good. And also it's just, it's the apocalypse. So I'm also very emotional depending on the day of the week, and, trying to maintain my mental health just like everybody else in the world right now.
Yeah. That's another sort of paradox of being someone who cares for people, but also needing to find those places where you're caring for yourself in the midst of it too.
Absolutely. And then in terms of like grace that I'm seeing, I work in a field that I think just across the board people think of as very dark and scary. And while what we're trying to stop and prevent is obviously horrific and awful, but I am always trying to convince people to come to work with me, because healing work and community building work is actually really gorgeous and full of light and full of generosity and compassion. And so watching my team show up every day in the midst of a global crisis is really incredible. Watching volunteers continue to show up to trainings and conversations and, brain trusts, like thinking through how are we going to address this issue or that issue, has been incredibly encouraging. And People, when we think about hope is, we have hope because we have faith in a different future. We maintain hope because we know in our spirit that something different, something better is on its way. And so being in a community like the Firecracker Foundation has really helped me hold on to hope, because it's like I'm visioning and futuring with people who really believe in that our world can look so much more different after this.
That's an interesting parallel to my own experience being a pastor, is that I'm constantly having to look. I feel like if you're not in a leadership position, you just get to look like right down here at your, like, the space right around you. But if you're a leader, you have to like raise your head up and you have to look out into the future. And it's like that process of doing that keeps you kind of sane right here, right around you at the same time.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because there are moments in my work where I have to be like hyper focused on what's happening right now in this moment. But a large part of it is like, I'm going to make this decision today, but I have to think about this decision in terms of how is this decision going to impact 4 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, 2 months from now, towards the end of the year, when we're in a changing climate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like everything's changing. So yeah, a lot of my work is visioning. If we see, like, we're on an island and there's an island like over there that's like the end of child sexual abuse, like I'm spending a lot of time thinking about what rocks do we need to throw into the sea to like get us across to that island.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that work with my team and with my volunteers is really visioning how we get to a world where this kind of violence doesn't happen anymore, and what are the micro steps that we can take every day to get closer to that vision.
Man, that keeps you getting up in the morning, that basic vision of getting to that island. I think back, we were talking before we went live about when you and I first met. I was on a kind of networking binge and just meeting a lot of people, and we sat down. I don't know if it was for coffee or breakfast or lunch or something in the Fleetwood Diner. And this was 7 years ago or so, and you were just getting this Firecracker Foundation off the ground. And you said now you have 100 volunteers, which, that's just amazing to me, that you've built this organization. You've brought along 100 people with you who are helping you throw those stones out there to get to that island where there is no more child sexual abuse. I'm just impressed, so impressed with your capacity building in that respect. So there's not a different person that I want to talk to about this topic. I mean, your ability to build an organization to share that vision with others. So tell us, what do we need to know in the midst of this? I mean, we hear the news about these sort of situations, and I think most of us feel a little helpless, or like it was dawning on us, like, oh my gosh, like this, yes, that's absolutely like a problem. So what do we need to know about child sexual abuse amidst sheltering in place?
I think it's really important to understand that while global pandemic where we're sheltering in place makes children more vulnerable, it does not and has not invented the problem of child sexual abuse in our home. And so the children that were not safe before the shelter in place happened are still the same children that are not safe now. I think that distinction is important, because I think that there are things that we could be doing better that we haven't done. And I think that I'm wanting people to kind of hold that helplessness or that feeling of like, what can we be doing differently? Because that is that futuring, right? That's that visioning, because we have always been responsible for children who have been experiencing harm in their homes, and they have never felt safe enough to ask for help because of the structures that we have in place in our community, and because of the ways that perpetrators groom them, threaten them, all of these things. And so we do have to start thinking about, okay, if this was true before and it's exacerbated now, what are we not doing? Like, what are we not doing as a community that children do not feel safe to come forward and ask for help? And I think that's a critical question that we should all be asking ourselves all the time.
Something that strikes me about what you just said that I haven't, I mean, so as a pastor, at least a pastor in a major denomination, you get a lot of training about this sort of stuff. And one of the things that just is regularly emphasized is that the people who are perhaps the perpetrators of this abuse are not necessarily, are actually very rarely like the stranger that's walking down the street. It's the people that you know. It's the deacon or the leader in your church who everybody trusts, or the parent or whatever. And it's almost like this pandemic is putting a spotlight on that truth, that it's not the sole stranger walking down the street. It's the people right around us.
Absolutely. And we already knew that 1 in 10 children are going to experience sexual violence before they turn 18. We already know that children with marginalized identities have an increased risk of experiencing child sexual abuse or other forms of sexual violence because of the ways that white supremacy and capitalism dehumanize people of color or people with disabilities, Indigenous youth, LGBTQ youth. So these are all things that we have been tracking statistically for a really long time. We also know that most children don't come forward until they're in adulthood to anyone other than their peers. And so there is something that's happening there in our relationships where we're not creating enough open conversation with our children or spaces of safety where they feel like they can ask for help.
Mm-hmm. Friends, I want to remind you that you can ask Tashmica some questions. You can put them in the Q&A section here on Zoom, or you can post them in the comments on Facebook. And Jeremy Cracky, our producer, is paying attention to those two places, and we'll bring them to Tashmica in just a little bit here. So Tashmica, if those places are not, or if we're not kind of creating those structures where people who are experiencing this can come and share these stories, how is the Firecracker Foundation doing that, or how can we help?
So we have been really having a lot of conversations with our community about safe, healthy check-ins with children right now. And so we all have children in our family that we have a relationship with that's already established, right? And we all want to imagine that nothing like this will happen to the children in our families, and many of us will be wrong. And it may not be that it may not be that the perpetrator is in your family, but there's a high likelihood that there will be someone that you are in relationship with that will do this kind of harm to children. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that's just the reality. Mm-hmm. And so if you are already in relationship with children, then build upon that, right? Like if you are already on Instagram with your niece, start building conversations with her. Have conversations, share readings, do a book club, share skills, offer to read to the kids in your family virtually. One of the things that I've learned through talking to several survivors who are now adults is that having bystanders, people in their community, come to their home and just knock on the door and drop off anything, do a check-in, say hello, is something that also can interrupt violence in a home. And so I think sometimes people get wrapped up in, not knowing what to do, but really a lot of our simple acts of building relationships with kids builds resiliency in their life. So even if we cannot get them safe, and even if we don't know what's going on, those are counter ACEs. I don't know if you've heard of adverse childhood experiences.
Yeah, ACEs.
So many humans.
Unpack that though for people who may not be familiar with ACEs.
Sure. So adverse childhood experiences are the traumas that we experience as children. Most people have experienced a trauma in their childhood. That could include the death of a primary caregiver. That could include a major car crash. That could include having a family member incarcerated, being in a family where domestic violence is an issue, sexual violence is an issue. All of those things are traumas. What we are learning, though, in addition to the ways that adverse childhood experiences impact children and cause long-term consequences. So, children may have PTSD, they may have a higher risk of neurological issues, or excuse me, autoimmune issues. They may be more likely to have issues with addiction or mental health issues. So there's like all of these things that trauma can lead to, right, in the future. So what we are learning though is there are these counter ACEs, and counter ACEs are the things that community can do. So like a counter ACE would be, does your child have at least one friend that they trust? Mm-hmm. Do they have a caregiver that listens to them and loves them? Do they have a good relationship with an educator? Do they feel supported? You know, so there's like all of these different, are they eating every day? Are their basic needs being met? Right? So like all of these things build resiliency. And so if we as a community can't always intervene in active spaces of harm because we don't know they're happening, what we can do is build spaces for resiliency. And when we build those spaces, when we build resiliency by building relationship and supporting children, guess what? We also build trust, which means they're much more likely to have conversations with you about things that are hurting them. And so it's kind of a win-win in terms of a strategy.
I mean, this is, of course, why you're doing what you're doing. You make it so simple. I mean, basically, you just said to me and to those who are listening, like, be kind and reach out to the youth and the children that you know and build trusting, healthy friendships with them.
Yeah. I mean, I know that I'm like, I don't want to be like, yeah, obviously, but like, because I don't mean it like that. I mean, I kind of do, but like, you know, think about when you were a kid. Think about when you were a child and you were going through something really, really fucking hard. Like, think about the time that your mom was sick or you were sick or someone died, and think about the person that stepped in and saved your bacon, right? Like saved your day. They were the person, they were the teacher that you went to school for. They were the friend who walked to school with you and listened to you. They were your dog, right? Like your pet, the animals that you took care of. They were the cheerleading squad that you were on. You know, like these are actual markers in my life. Like I can think through my life of all of the places and people who saved me over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so I'm asking people to figure out how you can be one of those markers on like a kid's map. Like, how are you going to show up for children in a way so that they are always safe with you? Like they will never have to worry about you doing harm to them, and that you are someone who understands that if a trauma does happen, it's not their fault, right? And that you can support them without victim blaming and making them feel ashamed of themselves. And that you can just have fun with them, that they can trust you, you know, like, so I think it really is, it is in some ways very simple.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jeremy, you've been paying attention to the Q&A and in Zoom here and on Facebook. Have anybody posted any questions for Tashmica?
Well, I have a question personally, but someone's watching on our Facebook platform that works at the hospital and has been recently putting together some packages or little bags full of gifts and whatnot for children. And they're wishing that, they're hoping that some of those bags get passed on to your kids that you represent through Firecracker.
That would be really nice.
Yes. One question I have for you is we've been talking about the potential threat for child sexual abuse with individuals maybe in the household or in those very close fringes to a family. And earlier we had been talking about gaming and whatnot. And my child, I have a 10-year-old who's playing online games. And I wonder what resources or what advice do you give family units regarding online protection for kids?
Play video games with your kids. I say that as a total hypocrite because I am terrible at gaming. But if you have the capacity to play video games with your kids, please do it. I mean, it's fine to limit gaming. I understand, like we have a whole chart over here, y'all, about how we are supposed to be managing our online stuff right now. We are not doing it because it's the apocalypse. But if it were not, we would. But honestly, play with your kids. Learn who they're talking to, listen in on their conversations, interrupt their conversations if you hear something that you don't like. I'm not going to name which child. We can pretend like it was like this happened to some other family. Okay. This is
asking for a friend.
Yes. This is a purely hypothetical thing that I'm sharing with you. But I noticed that a group had been named something like "You're Gay," right? So I went in because I have permissions to this particular account, and I changed the name to, it's actually one of my favorite things that I've done in the past 2 weeks. I changed the name to "Nope, not that name, love so-and-so's mom." And then I just left it. I left the conversation. And I let my child explain why we don't do homophobia in our house. Or some other kid. It wasn't my kid, some other kid. I let that other kid explain.
Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend.
For a friend. All right.
But like, had I not been a part of paying attention to that, and I want to be very clear that I am not perfect, and like online engagement with kids is the very worst. It is impossible to be on top of everything because they are so smart and talking to their kids on their friends on Instagram, on the video game. If anything, I'd love to be able to lie to you and be like, oh, you should just limit their access so they don't have all these channels. But I don't think that's realistic. Mm-hmm. I think what's more important is having conversations about what's happening online and being a part of it as much as you can, or as much as they will allow you to, when they are doing fun things like games.
Jeremy, it looks like after this episode's over, I'm going to be playing some Minecraft.
Hey, you're now paying me to play games. Thanks.
Well, Tashmica, thank you so much for talking to us today about the Firecracker Foundation and about childhood sexual trauma. We're going to get back to how people can keep up with you at the end of the show, but right now we're going to make a pivot to the segment in our show that we are calling Co-Video Conversations. All right, so this is the new segment of our podcast where we share a video, a meme, a photo, a news event, or pretty much whatever is on our minds, and we have a conversation about it. To make it interesting, we unleash our executive producer, Jeremy, and we let him out of his producer cage to lead the conversation.
Yes.
I'm not sure this has been a good idea, but Jeremy, what do you got for us today?
Well, I think what we have is a perfect video. Tom, hit it.
Oh, dear. Is this what is that?
The bobcat.
A bobcat? Whoa! Oh my gosh.
No, this is in Louisiana, you guys. And someone recorded this bobcat traversing all of this water in just a couple leaps and bounds.
Hold on. I got to watch that again. That happened too fast.
It's crazy. Let's do it again.
You sure this isn't up in Traverse City?
Nope, this is in Louisiana, which is bizarre.
That cat looks like a leopard or something. Wow.
So this video went viral a couple days ago. And the question I have in mind when I'm watching that is, number one, there's cats in Louisiana. I thought there was only alligators and weird things like armadillos and things like that. But I've never seen a cat jump like that. That's crazy.
Well, and in broad daylight.
Right. Like, was it hunting? Like,
Tashmica, have you ever even seen like something like that in the wild?
No, but you know what? These animals are living their best life without us.
They are.
They are having the time of their lives, and they are just hoping we never come back. If I were a bobcat, that's what I'd be doing right now.
Oh yeah, heck yes.
That's a whole other part of this whole story of COVID-19 about how our impact on the world has shrunk.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen bunny rabbits and like big rabbits in my backyard lately, and I don't see them like that all the time.
I got these two huge bunnies that fight each other every morning, and it's amazing. They jump like straight in the air, and they jump like 3 feet up. It's crazy to watch.
Tom, we don't care at all about bunnies. Carrot? No.
Tashmica, I have to put up with this on a regular basis.
All right, Tom, what do you got?
All right, so I did actually bring something today. This was a monumental moment, and I have been waiting for almost 9 years for this moment. All right, so here we go. This happened the other day.
Wow, look at that kid go.
That is my 9-year-old son mowing the yard for the first time ever and loving it.
Tashmica, does any of your kids mow the lawn?
Oh, please, yes, yes, 100%. They do everything. Because I tell them all the time that I am only working now because they're not old enough to make sure I don't have to work anymore.
There you go.
Jeremy, has Jonah mowed your yard yet?
So our kids, my son and Tom's eldest son is the same age, 9 and 10. And no, he is not mowed yet. He's busy playing Fortnite. But we've now instilled the allowance game. Like our allowance game is upping, and that's definitely going to come. He's more.
Do you know how we motivated him to mow the yard?
He hasn't seen the video yet, but he's more intrigued by the weed whacker, which other parts of the country call it weed whipper. What is it? Oh. What do you guys call it?
A weed whacker. Yeah,
weed whacker.
Sure.
Some people call it the weed whipper. I don't know.
No, Levi just mowed for the first time, though. My youngest. My 2 oldest have been mowing forever, but Levi, we actually just shared a photo a couple weeks ago, and he's out in his snow boots randomly mowing our backyard, wearing sunglasses, and he looks very, very cool and intense about yard work.
Right. I have a little bit of yard OCD, so I kind of don't want to give up that responsibility, because then the lines are not going to be exactly straight.
I could care less as long as the dandelions are not sticking up anymore. But I'm going to put a bow on this conversation by bringing it back to video games, because we motivated him. He's earning Minecraft minutes.
Oh,
so
that's smart.
He earned 20 Minecraft minutes by mowing the backyard.
That's amazing. Yeah. I don't earn anything by
to do it.
I don't
and he
get
said,
anything.
when do I get to do it again?
I love that.
There you go. There's your parenting tip for the day. Minecraft minutes for mowing the yard. Hey, Tashmica, how can people keep in touch with you if they want to learn more about the Firecracker Foundation or just hear what you're up to?
Well, we have a Facebook page. That's probably a great way to at least get connected as a starting point. We also have a Facebook group for Firecracker Foundation supporters. So if you're interested in learning, skill building, and also just like, you might hear from me that I need someone to pick up a thing at the other thing and bring it to this other place. And we have volunteers that just raise their hand to do things like that every now and again. And so that's really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I found that our Facebook page is more up to date than our website page, which I think you said was the case for you as well.
Yeah, we're working on our website. If you want to find out how to volunteer, it's a little bit of a mess, but my volunteer committee is actually literally working on that tomorrow night. So maybe, who knows?
Okay.
Who knows what's possible in the next couple of weeks. But if you follow us on Facebook, we do a pretty good job of looping people in on how to get connected.
All right. Well, how can our viewers be in prayer for you and for the foundation?
So many things come to mind. We're doing like everybody else, right? Like we're just trying to figure out how we are going to continue our mission under these conditions. Mm-hmm. So we have a value around being creative when we're seeking solutions.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. And so I would say, just keeping us in mind in terms of like, we're having to be very, very creative right now and very flexible in the ways that we serve families, and that we'll be able to gather the resources we need to continue that work.
All right. Well, that might as well have been my prayer request too. So I'm going to pray for both of us and all of us who are leading volunteer organizations for creativity. We like to throw curiosity and compassion in there too. As our core values. But friends, will you join me in praying for Tashmica and for the Firecracker Foundation? God, we are grateful for the chance and the time that we've had to listen and learn from Tashmica, and to understand just some of the simple steps of providing safe places for the kids that are around us. We pray for the Firecracker Foundation for a deep creativity in Tashmica and in her board, and her volunteers, as they seek out how to continue to build a more hopeful future, to throw stones out in that water to get them to that island, get all of us together to that island of where there's no more child sexual abuse. We pray that for all of leaders and organizations, for that creativity to make those shifts and those pivots in this crazy apocalyptic time. We ask all these things in the name of Jesus and the power of your Spirit, and all who agreed said, amen. Amen. Hey friends, join me in giving Tashmica some love in the comments section and thanking God for her. And there's a couple of things that I want you to know about and be aware about that are coming up. Our Daily Shelter has moved to a midweek podcast. We broadcast on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and usually those are at 3 p.m. You can join us live at sycamorecreekchurch.org/ODS, and that's the way you get into Zoom. Or you can always watch them afterwards on Facebook or on our YouTube channel. And while you're at it, while you're on those pages, we would just encourage you to take some time to like those, and you will be in touch with us and be in the know about how to stay connected. We'd love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Tomorrow, our guest is Anna Maria Horn. Anna Maria is a local gospel recording artist, and I found myself turning more and more to Black gospel music through this pandemic, or as Tashmica has been calling it, this apocalypse. Anna Maria is going to help us understand more fully the gospel in gospel music. Right now, I think we all need to stay connected to something bigger than ourselves. We want to encourage you to connect with God and others at Sycamore Creek. Stay with us and always be connected by filling out our digital connection card at sycamorecreekchurch.org/connect. We don't want you to shelter alone. We want to shelter together. So connect with God and with others at Sycamore Creek. Friends, you've been watching Our Daily Shelter, a daily-ish live interactive video podcast and ministry of Sycamore Creek Church in Lansing, Michigan. In this time of sheltering in place, we think it's important to connect with the community. So find community every Sunday at 1 p.m. in a live interactive worship event at sycamorecreekchurch.org/SL-worship. That stands for South Lansing Worship. Or every Monday night in a church-wide video chat open to everyone at sycamorecreekchurch.org/all-chat. You can connect with us and we can connect with you through our digital connection card found at sycamorecreekchurch.org/connect. Submit prayer requests here on this topic or really any topic, or by email at prayers@sycamorecreekchurch.org. We've got a team of people who are praying for you daily. Download and check out our app by searching for SCCMI in your app store, and you'll find lots of great resources there, including past and current sermons. You can also join the mission of Sycamore Creek by giving financially through the app or at our website, sycamorecreekchurch.org. Your generosity helps make resources like Our Daily Shelter available for free. Take a moment and like and follow us on Facebook and share this video with your friends so they can find daily shelter in God's grace too. You may be sheltering in place, but we're here to help you shelter in God's grace. Make your home a shelter of the Most High.